Happy today. I am William Brown from williambrown.com. Welcome to Disconnect to Connect and our one-word conversations. I'm excited about today's conversation because our word is light. And it's really hitting me in a lot of different ways. So it'll be interesting how this conversation goes, because, I'm on this journey of enlightenment, and staying in the light, and staying present, showing up, from my theater training. You're looking for the light, hitting your spot there. So I have a dear friend that is going to join me, and I'm going to bring him up now. And if I hit the right buttons here, let's see if there you are. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, William. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I would love for you to introduce yourself however it feels comfortable to you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very happy to be here joining you today on this conversation. So my name is Greg. In a show about labels, first, something that's not a label. I'm a human being.
Right.
But the labels that I wear out in the world are, I call myself a multimedia storyteller. And that means that in my adult life, in my professional life, and my creative life, my life for fun, I create in a variety of different medias. I work in a variety of different medias. That could be photography, which is how I came to know you a number of years back as a photographer. Right. It could be podcast host and producer. It could be seeker, traveler, musician, son, family member. There are many labels I could apply to myself, but I love to tell stories. I love to have conversations. And so I'm honored to be here on your show, to be on the other side of the microphone.
Wow. No, that's great. I definitely appreciate it. You create these incredible, pictures, and you capture these incredible moments. And so, after I was able to talk to this, this person that's creating these incredible moments and capturing these moments, I was like, wow, he's a really incredible guy too. So it's like, oh, okay. So let's and I guess, and he has words that goes along with that. So when light comes up for you, what, how does that land?
Well, it's a timely conversation for me because it's a word that's been around my whole life. It's been a word that's very important for me, and I recently made the decision to incorporate all of these seemingly disparate areas of my life under an umbrella that I've been looking for to figure out what to do with it all and how to use it for many, many years. And so light can mean so many things, and that's part of why I love the word and part of why I love this conversation. And because for me it's a verbal exploration of all of those different things. And so first of all, I guess to set the scene is, if you go back in the Wayback Machine, my dad is a physicist and an engineer, and so I guess maybe my first hearing of the word light or understanding of the word light was in science terms. It was light as in, the spectrum of light, the light that's visible that we see. And at some point that became the light that informed my photography as I started getting interested in photography, something that started in high school. And later in life, I didn't pursue a professional career as a photographer for many years. It happened, I guess, technically in my 40s, almost late 30s, early 40s. I started utilizing a camera, and I find that light is everything in photography. I was finding light. That was the goal, was to find the right light, to create the right lighting, to seek it out, to know that it was going to influence and impact the photographs that I took. Then parallel to that, I've been on a journey as a seeker in a spiritual path, trying to answer the big questions in life. And so at some point about a decade ago, I started a podcast. And as I look back at the two podcasts that I've hosted in that decade, there was an element of conversations around light in that
Hmm.
sense, being a spiritual light, or being a light as in relief from suffering,
Hmm.
which is kind of my, uh, I guess, where I'm headed in my life, is to find that relief. I've been through a number of challenges, and I realized that what I was doing, I was seeking relief from suffering by finding light, or trying to see the light, both in a
Right.
spiritual sense, in a literal sense as a photographer, in a scientific sense, in all these different ways that one can use that word light. And then I had this aha moment not long ago, prompted by a question from a friend. And that became the idea that light was really underlying all the different threads in my life that I was
Hmm.
passionate about. And so I did some work
Right.
around that, chewed on those questions for a while, and decided that I was going to move forward under the banner of finding light. And it was really the ethos that I have embraced and been utilizing in my own life for a long time. And moving forward, it's the conversations and the work and the explorations that I want to have around light in all of its forms.
Right. It's no, thank you for sharing that. It's like when you said finding the light as a photographer, and then, how it comes up in so many, other places for you. The first thing that came to mind for me is like, light is everywhere. Why do you have to
Mhm.
find it? You just open up to it, and it's there. And it's maybe that's what life is all about, is just being aware of the light, being
Mhm.
aware of where it is, and where it's not, or where it has dimmed, or the shadows of our lives, that gets clouded with things. I think for I, like you, like other people, have gone through dark times, or times where you feel that there is light, or there
Mhm.
is or there is a light at the end of it, right? Or something, um and it's it's not. You have to kind of create the light, or you have to look in another direction for it.
Mhm.
How do you, in on your journey of, I guess, finding the light, and we can stay at the photography, or just with other areas. Do Is it like an easy find, or is it a difficult struggle to find or to seek the light?
Well, I mean, I think the answer to that question applies to all of the different threads that I mentioned. And
Right.
that's why I was so excited by the concept once I had this aha moment of, whoa, okay, this really does apply to everything.
Right.
Because so finding is an interesting word, as I sort of chewed on the what does that word mean. It
Right.
can be an active word. I'm gonna, seek. I'm gonna move to find it. It's out
Right.
there, and I'm gonna find it. It also can be, oh wow, look what I found. I
Hmm.
found this thing. It's here. I forgot it was there, or I didn't even realize it was there. I wasn't seeing it. I found it. It's there.
Right.
And that can apply to light in photography. And so for in photography, sometimes we're attempting to create optimal lighting conditions. We are attempting to, either schedule a photo shoot if I'm shooting outside at a time when, as a photographer, they talk about something like golden light, for instance, is a concept that we seek. We want these photographs that have a really amazing quality to them. It's usually earlier in the morning or later in the day.
Mhm.
As a photographer, you don't want to shoot in midday. The light is harsh. It comes straight down, and it casts shadows if you're shooting people. It doesn't
Mm.
make for interesting landscape photography. All of my favorite photographs were taken both of people, landscapes, wildlife, anything that I shoot. The best photos come earlier or later in the day. And so I would
Hmm.
intentionally schedule photographs if I'm shooting outdoors. If I'm shooting indoors, well, if I'm outdoors, I schedule things at the times when the light's going to be optimal. Theoretically,
Right.
if I'm in a studio, I'm working to create these this lighting conditions. But sometimes I stumble upon that light. Sometimes I have no idea. I set myself up for the possibility of success,
Right.
but then I find light somewhere where I wasn't expecting it. And so that holds true as a photographer. I may round a bend and whoa, I didn't know that that light was going to come through there. And that's really amazing. And that, lights my subject in a way that is very flattering. I didn't expect that. It's about being open to possibilities. And then that applies to my work, my practices, my interest in self-development, personal development, spirituality, all of those things. If I'm suffering, for instance, if I'm feeling depressed, something I've battled as an adult through my life was depression. And I'm happy to talk about that. Is there are active steps I can take. I can see a therapist. I could, if things were too bad, I could attempt to, take medication, or I could, do different things that would alleviate the depression. I would go out in nature. I would move my body. I would do different things that I know actively would help me find light in a way.
Right.
But sometimes I'm also able to find light. It's like, oh, well, I'm sitting in the darkest place and all of a sudden there's a glimmer of hope or optimism that I wasn't expecting. I found this thing that allows me to, whoa, okay, I didn't expect that, but there it is. And so the duality of the word finding really appealed to me because, it can be both active or passive.
Right. And I, I guess what we see and light, and, another way that light shows up for me as, the weight of it. And you're talking about your, depression and your bouts with that. Is that a feeling of, of the weight of light, or the weight of not having that? Is it really, does it really come on you that way? Also.
Yeah, that's another great descriptor of the word light, because when you think about how do you feel heavy or do you feel light? It's a feeling in your body. It's a vibration. It's a, when you feel heavy. It's like when those who have dealt with depression, the best way to describe it for those who have never been through that experience before, that at its worst, it can feel like a giant weight on your body that's literally holding you down. It can feel like you're holding sandbags. You're holding this weight that feels oppressive, that you feel like you can't move forward. You can't, because you're constricted under this weight. Or sometimes it feels like a cloud that's moved in, and the cloud feels heavy energetically or from a vibrational standpoint. And so then when we get relief from depression in any way, then we describe it as feeling light. We describe it as feeling, we open, we feel lighter, we feel the weight has been lifted from us. So, that's, the more I sit with this term light and how it applies to my own life, my work, in all of these areas, other people that I'm interacting with, I just keep discovering it's like an onion. There are new layers to this onion, and it excites me because there seems to be no end to the ways that one can, from various contexts, to approach this word light.
Right. It's kind of funny because I was, I felt light of, looking out and that it's everywhere. So that's the first time that it came up. And then it felt like, a weight, or being a lifting from the weight, and then, I went to Sunday school, and then I started hearing, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Right. So then I am now light, I am now the light, this little light that shows up in the world. And it's like, how am I showing up as light, and how am I really being out there and being amongst everything. And it's like sometimes on this journey of self-discovery, it's finding my own light. It's like finding it for myself, and recognizing that, I don't know where it went. I don't know, it's like, where'd you go? Right. And it's, if it's it's relationships, it's, how you your thoughts. How do you feel about you being the light?
Yeah, I think it's really crucial because one of the concepts that resonates the most with me, and different people would express it in different ways, is this idea that, you know, many of us want to help others. We want to serve.
Right.
You doing this show is an expression of William Brown, who wants to serve, wants to
Mm.
somehow show up and be a light in the world in your own
Right.
way. Me wanting to have this conversation with you, me wanting to do the work that I do, it's about, at some level, it's about giving back. It's about serving, and so many people, I think, want to do that and sometimes don't know how, or they do know how. They're in the middle of serving in some way, but they have neglected themselves. They're not able
Right.
to, essentially, they're depleted. And so, this concept that I love that really resonates strongly with me is that for us to be able to serve others and to be able to bring the light to others, we have to find it in ourselves first. We have to have self
Right.
love. We have to be filled up first. And there are those that might have said, well, that seems selfish, or that seems counterintuitive. Oh, I have to be giving, giving, giving. That feels like I'm
Right.
taking. But I believe that in my worldview, that if we take care of ourselves and we sort of,
Right.
whether it's somebody else or ourselves, hold a mirror up and see our own
Right.
light. Like, if I see that I am a being of light, I have light in me, then I'm better able to and have a greater capacity to then turn around and go out and serve others. And that's a really
Right.
crucial concept.
Absolutely. And I was, and what was coming up when you were saying that, for me, is recognizing the sparks in our life. It's like that, those hard places that kind of, rub together to spark, light or fire, or something. I like I said, it's very interesting because especially when you kind of look at, one word, and just think that there's a lot of words, feelings, emotions, desires that are connected to the words that we use. And sometimes we find it hard to really connect with each other and communicate on a level that's effective.
Yeah.
That makes a difference because the words that we're using may be the same, but the meanings and the feelings and the emotions behind it is totally different. And I feel I never want to dismiss anyone's light. I never want to. I just want to acknowledge, however the light, if it's dim or or even bright, it is just something that there's an honor in that. And just recognizing, I was just thinking of you as a photographer again, just recognizing how you relate to the light, how you relate to other people, and how do you, sometimes there are some people that we're around that you feel that they're dim, and they're okay with that, right? And they're, or they've accepted that, or they, because that's just the way, that's normal, and that's, and that's the environment that they were in, and sometimes when I was in those environments, or if I felt that way, I would kind of dismiss them or dismiss myself and kind of separate myself from people because I wasn't as, bright as, that I think I should be, or people wanted me to be, and all that. How do you manage light in your life? It's, is it just that searching, or is it just kind of, have sunglasses, ready at the,
Well, that's I mean, it's a very timely conversation. That's a timely question for me because, as we're taping this here in the time of the pandemic, and
Right.
everyone is going through their own struggles. Everyone is dealing with their own challenges and the unknown. They're dealing with it in a different way, and that shows up. That may change by the day, by the hour, by the minute, by the week. And so you mentioned somebody who's showing up as dim or whatever, and I would argue that when they're dim, when we see them as dim, number one, that they are failing to recognize their own light. They're failing to see what an amazing creature of light that they are, a being of light. But this is something we all deal with every day, and so I was having a conversation with a family member just this morning. I'm sheltering with family now here in the pandemic, and and this my family member who I love dearly was struggling with the news and the gravity of the situation, the potential things that were out there, as we move forward through this. And so for me, it gets back to another word that we talked about maybe having as being my word today. And you had already done this word, but it's another word that's really important for me. It's about compassion. And so that's another word that can be looked at obviously so many ways. And I didn't hear the conversation you had on that word, but it's about being compassionate with other people. It's about being compassionate with myself for how I show up or even react to that person in that conversation. It's about being compassionate for the situation, so as if I'm a photographer, it's about, okay, well, I'm in a situation where the light's not very good. It's not the light I wanted to get the photograph that I had in my mind. I was attached to an outcome of how it's supposed to look. It should look how I want it to look. And okay, if I catch myself in that moment, I can either just allow, I can be there in that moment and try to have some compassion for, okay, well, we got to make the best of this situation. We got to somehow find a way to do the best we can, and that's going to have to be good enough. Let go of the story, or take active steps to change it. But it's trying to have that compassion, and it's easy to talk about, but sometimes not easy to implement. But for me, it's about having a practice or set of practices that build the capacity for this compassion to see the light, to be able to see the light in them, to see that, okay, they're struggling, they have the capacity to, shine their light brighter, but right now that's just not where they are. They're struggling. Or me, I'm showing up and I'm in a bad way, or I've reacted poorly. I'm trying to have some compassion for myself, or I'm trying to have compassion for the situation I'm in. So I think for me, that's that's a sort of a parallel concept in all of this.
And I and thank you for adding that to this conversation, because what came up for me was, holding the light. You're holding space, for people who, and need it. And because you're shining on what's present, you are, basically you are there. And I think, too often there's a feeling for me that, we have to be, there's only an on or off switch, it's like we're either, on and all that other kind of stuff, or, or we're off, and there is, there's a dimmer switch that we have, we have control of, or we don't, or sometimes we lose control. And I don't know if I'm getting, I hope no electricians are, are watching and kind of like, what, but it's, it's just feeling that there is, when we find ourselves in environments or in situations where I guess compassion is needed, it's not an either or. It's not, I am going to shine brightly or not, where there is there's the gradient, of, finding, making do. It's really for me, the one thing about an artist, and, I think photographers are artists, is that what an artist sees in their mind's eye, and then what they create, there might be a difference because of of your humanity. What I believe your humanity is your choices. It's like you can see it a certain way, but there are some choices that you have to make to kind of create that. And sometimes you may make choices that will kind of keep that from happening, or it happens differently. And if you're willing to accept that new reality or that new possibility, then that a new image can emerge. And it's
Yeah.
like, what do you think about letting go of, I guess, your an image or the expectation of how you should show up or how you should see things?
Yeah, that's a huge concept. I mean, I feel like, so I guess the way that it works for me, and the way that I see it with others, is creativity. As you mentioned, you were framing it as, and you artists are creative. And it's interesting that you said that, because I just had my last interview on my own podcast was a woman who, her jam was about creativity, and we talked about being creative in the time of COVID here, and she argued, and I loved this. She said, creativity is not limited to artists. It's not limited to painters, musicians, writers, photographers, whatever. She said,
Right.
the act of being creative is something you can do in any endeavor. It's about being connected and present. So you can be a creative parent. So, and when you're parenting, you can be a creative business person. You can be a creative gardener. You can be creative in any endeavor of your life. And for her, it was about being in it, being fully connected there, and feeling the fulfillment of this thing you're doing, whatever that is. And I love
Right.
that, because it got me thinking about my own creative practices. So as a photographer, what I do is, all of my best photographs come when I play. And
Right.
so the way that I frame it is, I set myself up for success. I put myself in a position where hopefully I'm able to do something well. Like, the light is, I've found the light. I've created, done all these things. I brought the gear. I created a set of circumstances. I have an idea of maybe what I think it's going to look like, but I have to let go of that and then be in the moment, and then I play, and then I make something from that. And my success in doing that comes from practice. The more I practice that, the more I'm able to successfully let go of any notions of what I thought it should look like, and make it successful in the creativity of the thing that I don't understand. And what I love about that concept is it applies to everything. So
Right.
the practice can be how I show up in a difficult conversation. If I have a preset idea of how it is and it should be, and I let go of that, but I've been working on my inner capacity. I've been working on finding my own light inside, and developing, through meditation and mindfulness and the practices that I utilize, then I can let go of any sort of notion of what this is supposed to look like, the outcome, and then we can move forward and have something that's helpful in that situation. It can be a conversation, it can be, a business transaction, it can be anything. So it applies to Diana Rowan's notion of creativity from my show. It applies to anything that we've talked about. It applies to things that might, fall under the traditional umbrella of creativity, like photography or art, painting. But I think it's anything.
What do you think creates the disconnect that you were talking about there? Is it societal? Is it conditioning? Is it upbringing?
What? Tell me more about the disconnect. Like, what do you
the disconnect of feeling that I'm not creative, I can't play, I can't, I have to, I either have to show up this way or that way. There's no movement in how I'm showing up. It's kind of when I talk about living beyond our labels, it is giving us access to more of ourselves. It is not just saying that I am, this or that. I am everything,
Yeah.
And the more that I embrace the bigness of myself, um, and I can say good or bad and all that, I can use those words and judgments, for my life. But when I kind of limit myself, when I kind of disconnect myself from my bigness, then I become small, then then I can't hear that I can also be creative. I can also do all those other things. And I was just wondering what creates that disconnect.
Right. I think my take on it is that at an evolutionary level, humans evolved, and regardless of how you believe we evolved with an intelligent creator involved or not, we have been around on this planet for a while. And so as we evolved as creatures, at some point it served us, and it served us well, to tune out all other things and focus on one thing. And these labels, if you will, they were probably a survival mechanism. They probably allowed us to be comfortable, because if we could just not have to think about things, it gave us some advantage at an evolutionary level. And so it feels comfortable. So we grew up allowing these labels. The labels are put on us generally by other people. They're subconscious things that we adopt, that we choose to participate in, accept, and follow. And I think at some level, subconsciously, it's comforting, because it means we don't have to challenge. We don't have to think outside the box. We don't have to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations, because if I can just follow the label, and I know that label feels comforting, that label feels comfortable, even if it gives us a lot of pain, even if it's restricting, even though it keeps us from doing all the things we want in a life or a relationship or in art or whatever. At some level, there's a comfort there, or we wouldn't stick to it. So it kind of gets back to this idea of what I was talking about with practice, is that starting to muscle build, it's all of these things take practice. And so, if I want to say, okay, I'm a podcast host, the first time I would have ever thought that thought, I thought, well, geez, that's an imposter syndrome thought. Like, who am I to host a podcast or a video show?
Right.
I don't have a big following. I'm not a media dude. Well, I mean, I worked in radio back in my younger life, but for most people, and even when I was away from radio for many years, and even then I thought, well, who am I to start a podcast? Nobody knows. I don't have a blog. I don't have a book. Who's going to listen to that? Like, why would anybody listen to me? Who's this dude? Who just thinks why would they tune into me? And so it's uncomfortable, but I had to start to lean in and build that muscle, and then just start to show up. And what you're doing with Disconnect to Connect, you started, in full disclosure, I've, been part of your journey now for 6 or 7 years, since we first met at Camp GLP, and we were part of a men's group together for a while. And so I've watched you, go from what I would say is the comfort of the labels that you were in, even though they were discomforting. You were in those labels, and the Bill Brown that I met in those days, I've watched you muscle build step by step by step. You start building those muscles until at some point it's scary, but you're ready to step to the next thing. You're ready to publish a book. You're ready to start a video series. You're ready to move towards things that feel uncomfortable, because every one of us experiences that when we step out into the arena, in Brene Brown terms. When we step into the arena, we're stepping into the arena here. And so I just think with all of those things, or maybe that's, we're practicing, we're muscle building, and we're building the capacity on all fronts. And that's what it's about.
Right. And I appreciate that. And that is so true. I mean, my given name is William. But as a child, I felt like that was a big name. That was an adult responsible name. So I created Bill. And so Bill was this nice guy. Everybody loved him, and, people pleasing, all those things. And he served me well, right? Yeah. Until he didn't, right?
Until he didn't, right?
Right. And then it was like, okay, let's just take on this William guy that I
Mhm.
haven't even, I felt that I wasn't big enough to handle. Now, um, now I'm going to try this on. And it's through the past, 5 or 6 years, I've been growing, building the muscle in this William, character, and it's kind of interesting because it's like, wow, that's pretty crazy. That's been your name, but
Mhm.
I have to like remind myself, this is who I am. This is how I'm showing up. This is what I'm figuring this out. I'm coming into it.
I had to do the same thing. People called me Greg my whole life, but I wanted to be Gregory. Professionally, it meant something different to me, and so the same exact thing. It's funny. You see the names on our screen. There's William and Gregory.
Right.
We're showing up as William and
And we're
Gregory.
here, right?
Here on these
Scrapping in our
conversations.
life.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I love that.
And it's, I say in my conversation around labels, our most important label is our names.
Mhm.
And because that gives people access to everything, to the Greg, to the, all the other nicknames, all the other things. And so because once we really hold on to that name, then we can we kind of embrace everything that's under that umbrella and what that means to us and how we can kind of create that. And I think my journey of my word for the year is remember. And
Mhm.
how that occurs to me is that I want to remember myself. So I am
Mm.
putting myself back together because a lot of my life was disconnected. I was, my work life, my home life, all the different, lives that I had. And I had this reoccurring, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I had this reoccurring dream of me just spinning plates.
Mm.
And, and all of these plates all over, I mean, it felt like there were like hundreds of these plates. And then at one point, I like looked away or something distracted me, and all these plates fell at the same time.
Mm.
And and I would wake up, and I was like, "Yeah, that's not good," you know. But that was my life.
Right.
I was all these different people, and I was like, "Okay, let's just kind of come together, have this integrated life, and just kind of figure this out." And I think the reason why my light didn't show up, or I didn't believe that my light was showing up, is because there were little flames all over the place. There were all these little things, and there were people smacking around these little flames everywhere.
Right.
And it's like, what the hell, right? you know, you know, But the more that on this journey of bringing these all together, I am controlling my bonfire. I am controlling my light. I am, kind of taming, this, and really kind of seeing what I can handle, what my
Mhm.
relationships can handle, and just kind of really working through that. And so I can really, like I said, I'm like jamming with this light thing because it's like, hey, this is my life too, right? It's like
Right.
it's just it's a part of me.
I love that, Bill. You said something really important. You said the word integration, and that's just such a crucial concept, I think. We have these disparate parts of our psyche and our being that, are seemingly out there. And so for me, it's fascinating that you mentioned that, because that's part of what with embracing and adopting this persona under the tent of finding light, it was integration, really. And it's funny because it's the first time I've spoken that out loud. It's the first time I've been able to orally describe it. And it was just you mentioning that. It's like
Mm,
that's how it's been working for me lately. I like pick up little nuggets from other people, and then I
yeah.
see how they apply to my own life. And so when I'm hearing you discuss your own integration, that's really what it was about, because I had these separate parts of my life that I had subconsciously or consciously kept separate. I thought, oh, that this thing is not connected to this thing, is not connected to this thing. This is, this Greg is here and this Gregory is over here, and this, these labels, the labels were separate, and I kept them
Right.
separate for a variety of reasons. And so I have wanted, there's been something in me that sought integration, that sought wholeness. And so, yeah, it's about finding a way, it's a metaphor, light, bringing these disparate, seemingly disparate parts of my life under this umbrella of light as a metaphor, but it's also literal. It's an integration of these fragmented, fractured parts of my life that I can come together, and I can see how they're all me. They're all part of me. They're all intertwined. There's no separation or wall between this part of me and that part of me, and that's integration, and that's healing, and that allows me then to show up and shine my light better, reflect my own light back to myself, see like, okay, I am this being of light. I've been healing and working on myself, and I see myself in a different way, in a more positive way. I see the light more, and then I'm able to then turn around, and through the work that I do, that might help other people see the same and come to the same realizations, and through the work that I do, and that's what I want.
Wow, no, that is great. I know we could talk for hours.
we could have an hour-long conversation, but yeah, I know you're probably we gotta keep to the show timeline,
right? And just kind of wrap this up. I mean, is there anything that was a good final statement or anything like there, but is there anything that you would like to share, or kind of say what's coming up, for you, that you would want, how people can connect with you and everything?
Yeah, sure. That I appreciate the offer to talk about that. As I mentioned, as I come to these realizations and decided that I wanted to pull all of this under one umbrella, I have started to build a new website. It's when I went to look at the URLs that were available, once I decided that I would call this Finding Light, and that was the new umbrella for these various parts of my life and work and things. I went to the findinglight.com, and it was taken. And I contacted the owner, and they wanted me to pay $19,000 to buy it. I was like, I think I'm going to find a different URL.
You can keep your light, right?
Yeah, $19,000. That's a pretty expensive light. Yeah. So anyway, so it was funny that you mentioned several times during our conversation, light is everywhere. And so that was what I downloaded, was like, oh, okay, what else could I use? And I'm like, well, that's an apt description for all these things, is finding light everywhere. And so I bought that, and I'm building the new Finding Light Everywhere website. And it'll be live within a matter of days from taping these conversations. I've been working on it behind the scenes, and it'll be a catch-all place where people can find out more about me and my work and my life in all of these areas that we've discussed. There'll be links and examples, and just a place to share. And then really what I want to do, though, William, is to have more collaboration, more work, with others out into the world, and, to bring this out into the global community, regardless of where you are in the world. If this is something, or these concepts or things that resonate with you, then I want you to be able to, I want to be able to build community around that, like you're doing as well. So,
well, I appreciate that, and I am definitely a part of your tribe. So
wherever
you're going, I'm coming with you.
Awesome.
So Gregory, thank you very much. This has been incredible. And do you have a moment to sit in the green room while
I am happy to move over to the green room, and thank you, William, for everything. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. So
wonderful. Thank you, my friend. Wow. Finding the light everywhere. That's or find the light everywhere. That's I think that's what I got from this conversation, is that when we open our eyes and when we kind of get present, there's light, and we are the light, and we can see the light, and it's all available. it's wonderful to have these conversations with my friends, and to have you be a part of it. So the world is waiting for you. The world needs you, and the world wants you. So go be you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.